A foreign Star Works production.
Hello there. Do you like music and bourbon? Well, you came to the right place. Welcome to the Bourbon Groove.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to an all-new episode of, you guessed it, and get that vocal effect ready, because we're going all out this week for the Bourbon Groove. I'm your damned host with all the whiskey and music knowledge, Tyler. If you like what you hear and feel so inclined, you should follow the show, favorite the show, 5 stars that show, tell your friends about this show, get the show on a first name basis with your cool uncle, grab that show on the ass, I consent to that, or whatever you want to do with the show, you filthy animals. We're hot off the tails of our last episode where we did our very first AB blind tasting comparison thing with Coors Whiskey Co. out of Golden, Colorado. Yes, you know which one that is. The same folks that make Coors beer produce some fine-ass whiskey as well. And I don't think I'm going to keep the hype going or talking in this way for much longer because it's tiring and I have been up for a very long time. So we'll see what happens. You'll see it dip considerably in the next couple minutes, I'm sure. That was an awesome show, by the way, because that's where we found that the upset was actually the Barman 1873, which is the entry-level offering from that brand. And I would also like to correct something. Okay, so I did call it Coors Distilling Co., which is wrong, especially since the initials for that would be, CDC. And we all know what that is. The CWC, which is probably a teen drama channel, which is also the Coors Whiskey Co., is called that because, well, they don't distill whiskey. Well, yet. As far as we know, of course. They are a source product, and they're probably going to be that way for quite a while, if not forever. And if they ever do change their name to Coors Distilling Co., and the new CDC, if they tell me to wear a mask, I'm about to get belligerent. But really, though, sorry for the mistake there. Coors Whiskey Co. All right. It's been a long break between the recordings of this episode and the week previously. I have been trying to do it earlier and earlier so that it fits with my personal life, my professional life, but it just didn't work out so well this week. In fact, so much so that we're recording probably the latest I have recorded before we hit that new episode thingamabobber on Wednesday mornings. So it's Tuesday night, which is usually when we record, but it's much later in the night, and I'm only doing it because this is the only time I have a chance to, and it's just what it is. The kid was supposed to go to karate. He decided he didn't want to go to karate, so he came back before I can record. We're recording in the studio, ... quotes, all these different things. It's a wonderful 55 degrees in here right now. Usually, in the last couple of weeks, I've been recording in different areas of the house, including my office and the wife's office. Some places, where we can just kind of chill out, still have a nice, good sound, but also, not freezing to death. It's starting to get pretty cold out here, and believe me, I know, because every MFer in New England is acting like this is the first time the shit has ever happened. And it is quite funny because I just have to remind these these wonderful bean tossers, these wonderful tea baggins, McGillicuddies, that I'm from Arizona. And you're complaining about how it getting cold? Bitch, you live in 120 degree weather, okay? And then you start complaining about the cold. Go ahead. Like me, I will take a negative 200 degrees. I will freeze to death and then be resurrected 500 years later in a post-apocalyptic world where we're voting for various clones of people that have no business running this country. But anyway, let's move on. But that was a really fun show. I was shocked to find that the 5 Trail got out-tasted by the Barman 1873 because I really thought the 5 Trail, being the premium offering, or at least the entry-level premium offering, would have smacked it around a little bit. Call it its little bitch. I don't know. I'm not a snooty fucking bourbon guy, so I don't know what it's called, but I was shocked to find that the Barman really crushed it. That being said, you can mix the two together. Yeah. Damn, child, you add those two together and you get a wonderful thing. So what I did was for that show, I didn't explain was I took the Barman 1873, which had I think it had a little bit less than what I had in the 5 trail, and then I finished some more of the Barman 1873, and then it had a base of the 5 trail. Very good stuff. All of it. I mean, if you haven't tried it yet, damn child, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, it would be like you're standing on a chain, for some reason, and then step off that chain, and to grab a bottle of water. It's like off the chain, baby. That's how good the CWC is doing with this whiskey stuff they're making. It was good, all right. And I still have some Barman 1873 left, so I am a happy camper. And when we were doing that tasting, I was sick and could hardly taste anything. And now that I can taste things again, it is good. All right. But, maybe we shouldn't live in the past, but maybe we should. I went and bought something else recently. I did think to grab some more of the Barman 1873, but that requires a drive on my part. Though it's nice that we live in a small town, very quiet, lots of cool things, like you can see the stars, walk to most places of note, and don't get overwhelmed with people. All that cool, fun stuff, but the problem with that is the liquor store nearby, which is about a mile away, has all your go-tos, but rarely anything exciting or stand out. I mean, at least for me. But I've had a whole lot of whiskey, so that's not fair. I mean, there's a few things like that they have to, when it comes to the bourbon, that I do think is awesome. Like, they have the Knob Creek 12-year, which is good. They re-upped their inventory recently. It had been sitting with one left for the longest time, then it disappeared. And then I went by the other day, and it had like 12 of them there. And I was like, damn. I can't wait to take 12 years to buy one every year, because for some crazy reason, the people here in this small town don't know that it's so fucking delicious. So I'm grateful. And I look forward to cashing on that for quite a long time. But speaking of lone bottles, I grabbed the last one of something that has been divisive on the internet, and I've been waiting for quite a while to actually try, because honestly, it's just been a thing. And you know what? We're going to be covering that thing today. Yeah, we're going to do it. That wasn't the plan, but screw it. So what we're drinking today is Traveler Whiskey from the folks at Buffalo Trace and multi-award winning musical artist Chris Stapleton. Let's talk about the whiskey for a second and how it came to be so Chris Stapleton. So after winning 2 Grammys in 2015 for his debut album Traveler, he decided he was going to pivot and lean into the whiskey world. So Chris Stapleton hawked his 2 Grammys at a pawn shop, used the money to buy a small 4-gallon pot still off the internet, and went to work learning the ins and outs of distilling. His first product, which he named Traveler, was a success between his friends and the music community, which got back to Buffalo Trace when famed tour guide Freddie Johnson had a squeak of the good stuff backstage at a Chris Stapleton concert at the Preston Arts Center in Henderson, Kentucky back in 2018. Back then, Stapleton kept the whiskey in these small cowboy hat decanters he had made just to pass out to his friends. Freddie asked for one of these decanters and took it back with him to Buffalo Trace. And Master Distiller Harlan Wheatley was like, "Shit, this stuff is better than anything I've ever tasted." The two got a hold of Sazerac, Buffalo Trace's parent company, to tell they about the juice that Chris Stapleton was making. They were interested and eventually reached out to the singer to see if he wanted to partner with the brand to, bump up the production, if you will. So Stapleton was excited for the opportunity and had some caveats, though. One, the whiskey would have to be aged in the best parts of the rick houses at Buffalo Trace. He was even like, "Yo, move that crappy Van Stinkle out of my face. I'm fixing to put my barrels right there, and you can put that Van Stinkle in the trash as far as I'm concerned." End quote. And the partnership with Ironclad ever since. And in January of 2024, during the height of dry January, everyone who sloshed the whiskey in their mouths and spit it out said it was garbage. And no amount of Chris Stapleton randomly popping up in Nashville's best liquor spot, Frugal McDougal, could change that. That's the story you never heard. What we're told is the official word on the street from Buffalo Trace's site. And that's what they said. This is what they say about Traveler Whiskey. For the first of its kind collaboration from Buffalo Trace Distillery, Traveler brings together the collective artistry of 10-time Grammy Award winning artist Chris Stapleton and Buffalo Trace Distillery master distiller Harlan Wheatley Distiller. In pursuit of the finest possible whiskey, over 50 blends were sampled before making blend number 40 the chosen combination. Blend number 40 is the carefully curated result of countless hours of testing and tasting, and exactly what you'd expect. A premium whiskey that speaks for itself. Authentically crafted to be there whenever you find yourself in good company. Okay, Traveler whiskey is easy to drink and hard not to love. And what they say for their tasting notes is complex aromas of vanilla, aged fruit, and buttery shortbread rounded off by caramel and a touch of oak. The palate has just a taste of sweetness followed by spice, toasted nut, and oak flavors with a robust finish. Okay, easy there. I tell you, this chat GBT is getting wild. I mean, they cut out nearly every part of the actual story that we just said before this official press release thing. But I digest. And speaking of, we have the whiskey here right now. I'm drinking it from my Traverse City Whiskey Code glass. And yeah, it totally tastes like whatever the fuck they just said. So, I like this a lot. Okay? I do. And there's a lot of folks on the internet, especially influencers, had a real hard time with this because, Buffalo Trace can do no wrong, and supposedly they did wrong with this one. And I disagree. I think it's pretty good for what it is. I mean, it's a blend of something and or another. It's all undisclosed because, again, you hypocrites with your I need transparency, and there's no transparency with any Buffalo Trace product. And even this one, other than Chris Stapleton picked the blend, allegedly, I mean, that could be made up. Maybe Chris Stapleton's not even real. I've never seen the guy in person, so I don't even know if he's a real person or not. It would be kind of like cool, though, if like Stapleton was actually an employee, doing all the blends himself, which is like, with his beard and a cowboy hat and shit, and he's all like, howdy, we need to add 12% of that mash bill over there into this, and it'll be some damned smooth, like that Tennessee whiskey taste, rough around the edges type deal. That's what I imagine he would say. But then he'd go over to the fermenters, breathe it in, say, hey, Harlan, this shit is crap, make me another batch. Again, this is all from like the video cameras at Buffalo Trace. This is all real stories, very real. And I'm like the first one to tell you about it. All breaking news, all that stuff. And I think that's what people's expectations are for celebrity partnership whiskeys. They think that, they treat it as if the celebrity was actually involved and held the hand of the distiller while they were making it and shit. And we all know that's not a thing. Because if it was, it would be like, a celebrity got into the whiskey world, but then 10 years later it came out, right? Because that's what makes more sense. So if somebody goes and partners with a big brand, it's going to come out pretty soon. And yeah, you're probably not going to like it as much because a lot less thought went into making it, right? I mean, 2 and 2 definitely equals 22. So that's what I get from it. But I think that's what people's expectations are for celebrity partner whiskeys. And unless you make up your own brand, like, Brothers Bond or Four Walls, you're going to get some static on you regardless of the actual finished product. I don't know why people hate it so much. I mean, maybe it's because, they're bitches. That's my guess because, folks for some reason think that no brand can do any wrong, especially the Buffalo Trace, which is hilarious because I think that they are okay, but they're not the best Kentucky whiskey out there. I think that goes to a certain brand that, how do I say this without getting death threats? Hit that 50 States of Whiskey theme song. 50 States of Whiskey theme song. Gobble, gobble. "50 States of Whiskey" theme song. Probably one of the quickest 50 States of Whiskey we've ever done, and probably the most vague, but maybe not, because I think I gave it away. But we're not going to go too deeper into that, because I really don't want it. I don't want to deal with all that stuff. But I'm rambling here. I know this. You know this. I've already had enough of this whiskey today, and you add that CBD I took earlier, and you got a mix of a fun time. It was an interesting day, having higher ups in my organization coming in trying to tell me how to do me and what wasn't fun. Those were the good times. I love it. I love when people are like this. We should have fun here, but also none of the fun, and I'm gonna be a complete dick to you the whole time. Good old days. I didn't miss that very much, but when you're back in the corporate world, that's just what it is. And that made me drink. But that's all. It doesn't matter, folks. We're here to talk whiskey and music, but it bared to be mentioned because it's been an interesting day. But I wanted to share something I observed at work as well. So there were these two folks at work engaged in a conversation about the upcoming regime change at the White House, and they were talking about all these politicians and whatnot as players in their fantasy football league of sorts. And so should do this year, and so should do that year, and so will be good at this, stay healthy. If that, it was all very weird. It's all a game to them apparently, and that speaks of that honestly. Because did you see what just happened? But I did have fun with these same folks. At one point, the folks were talking about how they were told by a they that something was a new rule, and I stopped them for a moment and asked them who they was. These folks got instantly defensive, and I was all like, all right, you need to adjust a tinfoil cap for just a second and not believe everything you read. Pause for effect. It went over their heads, not surprisingly, because, clowns be clowning, idiots be idioticizing, deplorables be deploring. Can we say that yet? Either way, I wasn't shot in the face, so that wasn't nice. But anyway, I digest the food I ate. Let's talk about this whiskey. So Traveler whiskey is from Buffalo Trace, right? It's a Chris Stapleton blend. Check. People have a problem with it because it's probably Canadian, and also the big one here is, for some crazy reason, people think Chris Stapleton is sober. So when somebody says that they don't drink a lot anymore, people say they're sober. Typical what an alcoholic would say. That is a very strange and very derivative way of describing somebody who just drinks sometimes. A big thing that happened with all the influencing and influencers and all that other shit when this first came out was the attack on Chris Stapleton. Said that he doesn't drink much anymore. They're saying, oh, he's sober now and I'm supposed to like this, and then it became like us against them type situation that it was embarrassing, to say the least, and hard to watch. And actually one of the reasons why I stopped watching whiskey tube channels and listening to whiskey podcasts. Because as each show likes to spoon feed you about the blends of their own mash bills and, their hypocrisy, these same community folks, in quotes, will try and bring anything down that they don't understand, like every other hate group. Yeah, I know that was an extreme comparison, but we're drinking, and we don't do a True Sauce Sunday anymore, so I'm going to get it out of my system somehow, right? It's also important to note that though I don't watch these whiskey tube channels anymore, I still get recommendations to watch them in between various kid shows because my kid uses my YouTube premium account, and these folks are switching to negative, like bad. Anyway, things like whiskey I'm not buying anymore and whiskey that I'm skipping on and overrated whiskey are just some of the titles of these videos, but negativity sells. So it makes sense. It's like you either talk about Buffalo Trace or you shit all over any other brand. But we're not a community, right? You're not. It's just not. There are other folks doing it with a full heart, but they ain't on YouTube. That being said, there are a couple. Obviously, not everyone sucks. And we've already talked about it in great lengths before, and I'm not going to because the last time I tried, Instagram deleted my comment. So, of a positive comment, by the way. Because remember, negativity sells. So it sells. So if I were to say, instead of the positive thing, if I just said Buffalo Trace, Buffalo Trace, Buffalo Trace, that would be the top comment of all time. But since I was real and said how nice and great a whiskey tube channel was, I got deleted. And I don't think that Instagram or algorithms understand me properly at this time. It's very strange. So I might go on like a crazy commenting trail or a thing, and I'll just like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 billion different accounts will get some kind of positive response from me. You want to know why? Because I'm dealing with depression. And that's the best way for me to work through it is by being positive somewhere else. And Instagram said, you know what? Fuck that, bro. We want you only negativity and go kill yourself. That's what Instagram told me. So thanks, Instagram. You fucking suck. Just like all these other whiskey tubers out there who are just, you know, telling you that something sucks because it's not Buffalo Trace. And, you know, I know it seems kind of funny to be talking about that on an episode where we're covering a Buffalo Trace product, but I neither digress or regress or progress. Anyway, I don't know what I'm going with all of this, but, you know, I feel like it needs to be mentioned somewhere that we need to be better to each other. I like to have fun on this show. I don't take it seriously. You know, I'm not crying over a whiskey brand because they screwed up something in the mash bill. I'm not getting so upset because I can't get a hold of a bottle, or, you know, I don't go on a giant bourbon hunting video and then only show you Buffalo Trace products. I mean, we're not doing that here. You know, we keeps it reals. We know that there's more than one distillery out there that makes good stuff. And that's where the Bourbon Groove comes into play. And yes, we will speak our mind, and yes, we will tell the truth, but we will consistently do that. We're not just going to do it because, you know, it makes sense at the time, or it gets you more clicks, or whatever the fuck you're doing it for. Maybe you ran out of ideas or something. I don't know. But here, we're just going to always be that way. And, you know, take it or leave it. Most people leave it, and that's fine. If you're listening to this show, you are part of the 0.5% of the populace that are smart. So thank you so much for listening to this. I just wanted to say thank you. But yes, I'm just saying that these influencers are really showing their real colors. And my guess, views are down, and they're trying something different. It made me very uncomfortable to be a watcher or listener, because how people really jumped on somebody who said they don't drink much anymore. And it's also just so weird to say that, as, you know, if sobriety is like a bad thing. Do you really think the makers of Coca-Cola drink Coca-Cola all the time? No, they don't. I know this because I've talked to a Coca-Cola employee. Do you know how much he drinks? 0. He drinks 0 soda. Take that into account, okay? So to say that, you know, Chris Stapleton was sober, and even if he was sober, okay, let's just say, you know, I didn't look into it, because it's none of my business, one thing, because I don't know this gentleman, and I have no right to know anything about his personal life. But it was brought up by complete strangers who only thing they do is talk about whiskey all day. And yeah, that makes sense. Let's attack somebody. So I'm not going to speak to that whatsoever, but even if he was sober, that's great, because I would really like to have a different palate tasting whiskey instead of somebody whose palate's been burned out by drinking too much overproof bullshit, especially if it's just one brand over and over again, and then they get pissed off because it doesn't, like anything else, doesn't taste like cherry and vanilla and caramel and shit. I don't want their opinion on something. I don't want their barrel pick. I want somebody who doesn't drink very much, because their palate is going to taste things differently than somebody who has no palate at all. And then I'm going to say palette one more time. Like, you know, when, you know, stuff that, you know, you put stuff on and then you wrap it up and then you mail it somewhere. A palette, right? All right. Anyway, I feel like some people were talking about all this to a level that... So what all I'm trying to say here is, with all this influence and shit, we were just saying, basically, well, what they're saying, I had nothing to do with that. They're saying, all right, you're sober, you're a bad person. Got it. That's why I stopped watching and listening to these things again, because this is just ridiculous. If anything, someone who doesn't drink much anymore, I mean, we've already talked about it at great lengths, and I don't need to keep talking about it, but you never know. Maybe somebody who doesn't taste as much whiskey could perhaps have a baller-ass pick for new drinkers. And people who don't drink much, or people who don't try to monetize their drinking, might love it. You know what I mean? We're, again, not one of those places. People are allowed to pick what they want to do with their lives. They don't have to poison themselves like we do. God, I hate being one of those high horse people. Hey, I'm talking to children so I can make a point. Shit, sorry. Either way, we're not doing it. The whiskey is good. I said it, fuckers. Or maybe the hate came from, I don't know, advertising. The BT doesn't do that. Well, they do through journalism marketing, which is more powerful and less expensive than, say, a commercial with actors having fun and drinking and shit, because people read the news and think it's real. I don't know why. It's never been real since the beginning of time. It's always been biased horseshit. Yes, if you're going, no, it's just been the last few years, look it up. Every news organization ever has posted biased bullshit to sway you in one way or another. It's a thing. But anyway, but Traveler was different. Maybe if it was because of the popularity, it was, hot to trot when it first came out, and then it died a slow death. I mean, I've watched the price drop since this one came out, and I grabbed it for just $35. Yeah, which is what it's worth, I think. We'll talk tasting notes in just a moment. But the commercial they were running with Chris Stapleton walking around the Rick House and whatnot, giving the finger to Van Stinkle, and the song "I'm Just a Traveler" at the end, it was cute but annoying. And I think it was running like on every commercial break for whatever I was watching. Maybe baseball? I don't know. I don't remember, because that ad had its way of making me forget everything. Because, when you're full of blinding rage, pretty much everything else around you, you're not noticing. You got the horse blinders or whatever the fuck it is. And, I said horse. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say horse. I know that y'all get really freaky deaky and you probably have to change your pants. I'll wait a moment while I go get some more whiskey. We're going to pause right here, but for you, it's going to seem like a second. Bam, and we're back. See how quick that was? And how transparent we are here? We also like to say parent, but I feel like we have to go back to transparent because that's what the expectation is these days. I don't know why, but, for some reason, that's a conversation. I don't know. But don't matter. The ad was just annoying enough to go, I ain't ever getting that whiskey ever now. But that all changed, obviously. We'll get into that in just a moment. I'm all over the place and need to finish this influencer thought. I'm guessing all the hate came from, turning on that clickbait machine that was Buffalo Trace. The distillery had partnered with a celebrity, and that was a no-no to any close-minded individual or snob of the sauce, which would make sense why bags of shit were so angry at this release. They were acting like Traveler came in and bought their mother's house out from under them, and then when she couldn't make the payments and turned the property into a gas station. There were often comparisons to other and more expensive bottles of Buffalo Trace products. No, this whiskey isn't Weller or Pappy, Stag, or E.H. Taylor. It's just Traveler. And it's its own thing. Like Fireball. It's its own thing, and made by Buffalo Trace as well. Most big-ass companies are going to make products that sell to the masses, and if they ever want to stay afloat, that's just what they gotta do. Because, believe it or not, these whiskey tubers aren't keeping electricity on, especially at the Holy Buffalo Trace. Now, I'm worried that any other misstep is going to lead to Buffalo Trace taking a shot in the right horn by some whiskey tuber who sobs whenever a product doesn't meet their expectations, and I'm worried for you guys, really. For these folks, doctors now are prescribing growing up. And that's all I gotta say. Finally. So let's talk about the music, right? This is a music and bourbon podcast, or in this case, obviously whiskey this week. But before we do that, let's go ahead and hear a message from one of our sponsors. Hit it. Wiki. Are you really, really hungry, but can't seem to find anything in the refrigerator that will make you feel good or fulfilled? Well, if you keep looking further, you might find our next sponsor. That's right. Today's sponsor is the last cheese stick in the back of the refrigerator. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I do that? And my answer to you is why not? More than likely you've had too much to drink. You haven't been to the grocery store in weeks. There's flies everywhere. You haven't done any dishes. In fact, you're just throwing away dishes because you don't want to clean them. And you don't know what to do with your life. But then you go look in the back of that refrigerator, past the Sunny D, past the purple stuff, and there, right in the back, is a wonderful, almost C-shaped cheese stick. And it used to be white, but now it's like an off yellow. And you don't remember the last time you bought cheese sticks, if you ever bought cheese sticks before in your life. And you're like, you know what? I'm hungry. And if I don't eat this, I'll probably die. And then also, if I eat this, I'll probably die. Last cheese stick in the back of the refrigerator. Coming to every refrigerator ever. Check now. Wicked. I am officially completely off the rails, and I am sorry. We will wrap this up shortly, get you going. So let's talk about the music part. What did I taste when I drank Traveler Whiskey from Buffalo Trace and Chris Stapleton? You're going to say, he tasted Chris Stapleton. And I said, motherfucker, that's what I did a couple years ago. And that was between me and Chris Stapleton. But I did not taste Chris Stapleton when drinking this whiskey. No. I tasted a band called Coconut Records. And I feel like we've covered them before, but apparently I'm mistaken, or I just had too much to drink and forgot completely. I know I could look it up, but why, That's what is both fun and annoying about this show and this tasting music ability. I mean, I don't know if I've ever done the show or the music paired so well with the whiskey that it became one of those sixth or even seventh senses. Like it's been a part of my life always in some ways type deal. So either way, Coconut Records is I cannot say coconut. Coconut. All right. Coconut Records is an indie rock band founded and mostly performed by actor Jason Schwartzman. Before he made his debut as Max Fisher on the 1998 breakout underground / cool and annoying kid only favorite movie Rushmore, he was into music, playing drums in a band that you've heard of called Phantom Planet. Isn't that the way it goes? If you look at his IMDb, it was Rushmore first, and then playing drums for Phantom Planet in an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. That's how long ago he's been doing it. I'm sure this isn't all well known at this point, but Jason Schwartzman is part of the Coppola family of filmmakers and entertainers. He is the nephew of Godfather director and wine guy Francis Ford Coppola, and is the cousin to Nicolas Cage. Yeah, amongst other people, of course. I heard about Schwartzman first through one of those annoying wannabe cool kids that was a friend of mine, as Rushmore was like his favorite movie of all time or some shit. But back in those days, I wish I was as passionate about a movie as this friend was. But alas, I liked Limp Bizkit and shit, so, it's just what it was. It was because of this friend that I also knew of Phantom Planet before their hit song California, and before they became a whole thing when that song was used as a theme song for MTV's teen drama, The O.C. You remember that? I've never seen a single episode in my life. I'm telling you, this guy was creepily obsessed with this Jason Schwartzman. Very uncomfortable. Not one of the reasons why we're not friends anymore, but one of the reasons why we're not friends anymore. But anyway, Schwartzman's acting career started to pick up steam, so folks say that was the reason for his departure from Phantom Planet in 2003. He was the drummer. Yes, I don't know if I said that before, but after being one of the original and founding members since 1994, yeah, he bounced. He's like, I'm going. 2003 is going to be all about me. That appears to be true because he was making movies left and right after that. Some of my favorite acting works from this guy, I would say, is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the HBO show Bored to Death, and Seven Chinese Brothers, which is another one of those indie movies. All very good. All check it out. Either way, when you see Jason Schwartzman pop up on the screen, you know you're going to have a good time. And I think really only him and maybe Judy Greer can do that for me. But anyway, it took the actor 4 years to finally get a grasp at tandem art mediums, and in 2007 he released Night Timing under the name Coconut Records. Schwartzman is credited with playing most of the instruments and wrote all the music. He also had help from fellow actors Kirsten Dunst, Zooey Deschanel, and Jennifer Furches with guest vocals, as well as other actors and musicians chirping in, including White Jesus himself, Brandon Boyd of Incubus, whistling. Yeah, this album is a masterpiece to say the very least, and one that I so desperately want to get on vinyl, but the out-of-print discs are going for tons of money. I mean, I originally found a lime on a wire, if you know what I'm saying, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to get a hold of this album, and I had it saved on my MP3 player, and all the songs were actually out of order. And so for possibly a decade, I thought that's the order. And I was like, hold on, that's math. Yeah, a decade. A whole decade, I thought that's what the order was. And to give you kind of an idea, so West Coast, which is probably the biggest song on this album, was probably second to last on the version that I had, whereas it's the second song on the actual album itself. So it was all out of wax and out of sorts. And even to this day, when I listen to the album in its correct chronological order, Oh, I guess it's not chronological, but the track order of the album, I still think that I'm going to hear a different song because it's so been programmed in my brain because I've listened to it so many times on that limed wire MP3 version of the album. Yes, I would later buy Night Timing and Coconut Records' second album, Davy, on CD via Mercari for $10 total. To give you an idea of just the difference of that, the vinyl for Night Timing is going for $800 on Discogs right now and selling for over $1,000 on eBay in the past and whatnot. And speaking of, I got into a bidding war on eBay, but I stopped at $200 for this album. It was all going down right when I was about to go on vacation. Otherwise, I probably would have gone all out and got this thing. Oh well. That album was originally released digitally before going to CD, which even featured Polaroids taken by Schwartzman randomly tossed in. And I tell you, if I was into vinyl back in the day or appreciate that album as much as I do now, I could have scored both that one and Davy for $30 total on some kind of holiday deal back in the day. And again, I say, oh well. But I ended up scoring the Bored to Death theme song on 7-inch single on vinyl a few years ago, so that'll have to do just for now. That's right. Not only did he star in the show alongside Zach Galifianakis and Ted Danson, he also performed the theme song. What? But this all has to say for one reason to lead to you to this. This certain song here is from Coconut Records, sounds just like Traveler Whiskey. And see, I'm sorry to say coconut wrong again. When I first popped this bad boy open and took a drink, and after I talked to my head off about the shit talkers of the world, or what you heard at the beginning of the show, of course, Coconut Records' Back to You played in my head. I fired up the Bluetooth and threw Night Timing on, and you see, the reason why I do that is sometimes the sound is like in the ballpark of what I'm actually hearing, but the actual song is something else. But I'm telling you, the Back to You pairs well with this Traveler Whiskey. Now, it could have easily been a Chris Stapleton song. It could have been, but I don't know his music. I have listened to, Tennessee Whiskey a few 100,000 times or whatever, because I think that they put it in the water, just like in fluoride when you live in Tennessee. And even though he's from Kentucky. But anyway, it doesn't matter where you're from, kids. It's about what you're doing now, right? But so he sang the Tennessee Whiskey song, which he did not write. It's a cover, technically, if you want to look at it that way, or a reimagining of a song that already previously existed. But I never actually listened to Chris Stapleton until I was at work back when I was in Chattanooga, and a coworker of mine was really into him, and Sturgill Simpson as well. And she recommended that I listen to his music, and I did. I listened to all of his songs, and I remember liking it. I mean, I didn't really like Sturgill Simpson very much, but I did like me some of that Chris Stapleton. And I can't tell you what songs I liked because I just listened to it all the way through, and then that was it. And then, of course, I also suggested songs to this lady as well. She didn't listen to any of them. To each their own. You can't assume that anyone's going to do those kinds of things. But Chris Stapleton, great artist. I just don't listen to him, I'll throw on a couple of Chris Stapleton songs on the continuous playlist, however, as well. Just, with the favorites of the Coconut Records, too. Just for a music companion to this episode, you can find a link in the show notes for that, because that's what we do. And I know that was a jumbled mess, but again, the CBD's hit me, and so is this whiskey. So hopefully that made sense. So Jason Schwartzman would come back with Davy in 2009, and it would be the last full album that he had done with vocals and stuff and all that stuff. Though he would score the music for a movie called Goats, starring David Duchovny, taking place in the city that I was born in, Tucson, Arizona. So, I liked that movie right away. And David did a really good job on that as well. It also starred Homegirl from The Departed. And if you haven't seen Goats, it's one of those coming-of-age movies? I don't know, something like that. It's just like a good movie about a kid leaving Tucson, which I can completely relate. And the adventures that come along with that, especially with super hippie Duchovny playing those strings. And it's definitely a wreck. Lots of famous faces in this one. So, even if, grab a bingo board or make it into a drinking game. Every person that you recognize from a TV show in the 90s or somebody who's famous now, take a drink. You will be obliterated quite quickly, I promise you. Besides a Twitter post, I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago, there's been no new music or hints of new music from Coconut Records or from Jason Schwartzman, which is a bummer, but these two albums are pretty dang good, and you throw in that soundtrack score and you will be enjoying your life to the fullest. But that's pretty much all I got for you party people. If there is one thing that I would like to instill in you into this episode is to not trust everything you see or hear or read from any whiskey influencer out there because remember, we all have different palates and we all taste things differently. I taste music, other people taste candy, for example. I like to talk about all whiskey and not just products from Buffalo Trace, right? So only you know if you like something so don't let other people's opinions deter you from making the right decision for yourself at your next stop at the liquor store. Let me go ahead, get off that soapbox now. Creak. All right, but that's all we have here this week on the Bourbon Brew Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you feel so inclined, again, like, subscribe, tell people about it. Illegally download it and play at a public function. Whatever you want to do, I'm all about it. I'm here for it. Hashtags, all of that. And if you'd like to see what we're doing on Instagram, you can follow us there at the Bourbon Groove. And if you want to see what we're doing on X, we're not doing anything, but it's there. You can also go to our official website where we have all the music featured on the show, where you can go buy the said music and all the other stuff, all in the links in the show notes, by the way. But yes, thanks for listening again. I really appreciate it very much. And hopefully this was cohesive and makes sense. We're not going to go back and listen to it. I'm not going to add some random sounds. It's getting late, and I need to go back to hang out with the family, so we're not going to have any super fun stuff this week. But maybe next week. Speaking of, we'll see you next Wednesday for yet another music-inspired tasting. Until then, pour yourself a song and listen to your favorite bourbon and get into, that's right, baby, the Bourbon Groove.
The Bourbon Groove is a foreign Starworks production. Recorded at It Might Just Be a Garage Studios.